On Easter week, her husband abused and divorced her. A billionaire saw her, hugged her, and proposed. My beautiful and amazing family, welcome back to another journey together. The stories we share connect us, and today's tale might just touch your heart in ways you never expected. Meet Olivia Winters, a woman whose smile once lit up rooms but now barely flickers. At 32, she stands before her bathroom mirror on Easter morning, gently dabbing concealer over a fresh bruise blooming beneath her right eye. Her trembling fingers betray what her composed face tries to hide. 6 years of marriage to Maxwell Winters had slowly dimmed her light, each harsh word and cruel touch stealing another piece of her spirit. Yet something about this particular morning feels different. Perhaps it's the Easter bells echoing through their upscale neighborhood, or perhaps it's the quiet voice inside her whispering that even the longest winters eventually yield to spring. I wonder, have you ever stood at a crossroads where everything familiar suddenly feels wrong? That moment when you realize the life you've been living isn't truly living at all? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one because your stories matter to me as much as the ones I tell. Before we dive deeper into Olivia's journey, a path that will take her from the depths of despair to an unexpected encounter that changes everything, hit that subscribe button and join our storytelling family. Because trust me, when you hear how a chance meeting with enigmatic billionaire Dominic Blackwood transforms Olivia's darkest Easter into something miraculous, you'll want to be part of every twist and turn. This isn't just another romance. It's about resurrection of the spirit, about finding strength when you thought all was lost, and about the power of seeing someone's true worth when they've forgotten it themselves. Olivia Winters possessed the kind of beauty that revealed itself slowly, not in bold declarations, but in quiet discoveries. Her chestnut hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, occasionally catching copper highlights when sunlight found her. At 5'6", she moved with a dancer's grace, a remnant of 12 years of ballet training that her husband had deemed a waste of time shortly after their wedding. Her eyes, deep amber with flecks of gold, remained her most striking feature, though lately they carried shadows that no amount of sleep could erase. Today, her slender fingers adjusted the high neckline of her cream Easter dress, carefully concealing bruises while her mind calculated escape routes and safe words. She'd chosen this particular dress for its long sleeves and modest cut, perfect for hiding the evidence of Maxwell's latest outburst. The fabric whispered against her skin as she moved, smelling faintly of lavender from the sachet she kept in her closet, one small pleasure Maxwell hadn't yet taken from her. When Olivia spoke, her voice carried a melodic quality, soft but clear, though she'd learned to lower its volume around Maxwell. Her lips, naturally full and once quick to smile, now remained carefully neutral unless social situations demanded otherwise. Yet something in her posture, a slight squaring of her shoulders when challenged, the way her chin lifted almost imperceptibly when Maxwell entered a room, suggested that beneath the carefully constructed facade of submission, embers of defiance still glowed, waiting for the right moment to ignite. Before Maxwell, Olivia Rivera had been the daughter of Portuguese immigrants who'd built a modest but thriving bakery in their small town. Growing up surrounded by the warmth of flour-dusted hands and the rhythm of her father's stories, she developed an unshakable belief in hard work and human kindness. Her childhood home had been filled with laughter, music, and the understanding that love manifested in actions more than words. The bakery had funded her college education, first generation, magna cum laude, where she'd studied art history with dreams of museum curation. There, she'd met Maxwell Winters, heir to a regional banking fortune, who'd swept her off her feet with promises of a life where her talents could flourish without financial constraint. Her parents had expressed quiet concerns about his controlling tendencies, which Olivia had dismissed as old-world caution. The shift came gradually after marriage, first with subtle criticisms of her friends, then restrictions on family visits, followed by financial control disguised as protection. Each boundary crossed made the next easier to accept, each apology more convincing than the last. She'd stayed initially out of love, then out of hope for change, and finally out of fear, both of Maxwell himself and of admitting her perfect life was actually a perfectly constructed prison. What kept Olivia going now was her secret plan, a small online business selling hand-painted greeting cards that Maxwell knew nothing about, with profits carefully hidden away. Each dollar represented another step toward freedom, another day closer to reclaiming the woman she'd once been. That, and the promise she'd made to her grandmother's memory, that she would someday find joy again. Maxwell Winters commanded attention even in silence, 6'2" with steel-gray eyes that assessed everyone as either asset or liability. His tailored suits and meticulously groomed appearance projected success, while his measured speech and calculated charm won over business associates and community leaders alike. Behind closed doors, however, his face transformed into something primal when rage took hold, a transformation that still shocked Olivia despite its increasing frequency. Rose Martinez, Olivia's childhood friend and the only connection to her past that Maxwell tolerated, managed the local community center where Olivia occasionally volunteered. With her vibrant laugh and unapologetic honesty, Rose represented everything Olivia had once been. Though their interactions were limited to supervised public meetings, Rose's knowing glances and careful questions suggested she suspected the truth behind Olivia's fading spirit. The Winters housekeeper, Mrs. Eleanor Walsh, moved through their home with quiet efficiency, her 70-year-old eyes missing nothing while her thin lips rarely offered comment. She'd been with Maxwell's family for decades, her loyalty seemingly unquestionable, though Olivia had sometimes caught flashes of disapproval in the older woman's face when Maxwell spoke harshly. Then there was Pastor Michael Collins of Resurrection Episcopal, where the Winters attended each Sunday as befitted their social standing. His sermons on redemption and new beginnings often seemed directed at Olivia personally, though they'd never spoken beyond polite greetings. Something in his gentle demeanor suggested he might be an ally, if only she dared to seek help beyond the carefully maintained facade of her marriage. The Winters' 3-story colonial home stood as the centerpiece of Oakridge Estates, its manicured lawn and heritage oak trees projecting established wealth and social prominence. Inside, cool gray walls displayed carefully curated artwork, all selected by Maxwell's decorator to impress guests rather than express personality. The formal living room, with its pristine white furniture and crystal accents, remained largely untouched except during Maxwell's business gatherings. Olivia found small sanctuary in the sunroom overlooking the eastern garden. Here, morning light spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows, warming terracotta tiles and illuminating her secret collection of art books hidden behind gardening manuals Maxwell never touched. The room's humidity from clustering potted ferns reminded her of her mother's greenhouse, becoming her only space for unsupervised tears or private phone calls. Their bedroom embodied their marriage's evolution, once a place of intimacy, now a stage for performance. The king-sized bed with its precise hospital corners and decorative pillows that Maxwell insisted remain undisturbed spoke of appearance over comfort. His closet, triple the size of hers, contained suits organized by color and season, while her more modest wardrobe had gradually shifted to higher necklines and longer sleeves. The community beyond their private gates buzzed with Easter preparations, pastel decorations adorning storefronts, children practicing for egg hunts in public parks, church bells calling the faithful to worship. This contrast between Oakridge's pristine isolation and the messy, joyful life beyond its boundaries heightened Olivia's sense of imprisonment. The seasonal promise of resurrection and rebirth felt cruelly ironic against her daily reality of slow spiritual death within gilded walls. Easter Sunday dawned with uncomfortable perfection. The winter's annual brunch, a social obligation disguised as tradition, brought together Maxwell's business associates, local politicians, and carefully selected members of Olivia's family. Crystal mimosa flutes caught sunlight while caterers moved efficiently among guests scattered across the manicured lawn. Olivia navigated the gathering with practiced poise, her cream dress complemented by the pearl necklace Maxwell had presented that morning, a gift she now recognized as prelude rather than peace offering. She noticed his unusually attentive behavior, the way his hand lingered possessively at her waist as he guided her between conversation circles, his voice slightly louder than necessary when introducing her. The shift came during the toast. Maxwell clinked his glass, drawing attention with the practiced ease of a man accustomed to commanding rooms. His opening pleasantries about spring renewal and gratitude felt scripted, but when his gaze fixed on Olivia, something cold flickered behind his smile. "Speaking of renewal," he continued, "I believe in second chances. Unfortunately, my marriage isn't deserving of one." Silence descended as guests froze mid-sip, uncertain how to respond. Maxwell maintained his pleasant expression while methodically listing Olivia's failures as a wife, her inability to produce an heir, her embarrassing lack of financial acumen, her disappointing social performances. With each accusation, he transformed private moments into public humiliation, recasting her quietness as coldness, her caution as calculation. As murmurs rippled through shocked guests, Maxwell's assistant appeared at his signal, presenting Olivia with an envelope containing divorce papers. The documents, already bearing Maxwell's signature, cited irreconcilable differences alongside provisions that would leave her virtually penniless. "Consider this my Easter gift to you, darling," Maxwell said, voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. "Freedom from a marriage that clearly makes you so unhappy. I suggest you review these with whatever legal counsel you can afford." Olivia stood perfectly still, years of navigating Maxwell's unpredictable moods the only thing keeping her upright. The envelope burned against her fingers like a brand while faces blurred around her, some showing genuine shock, others poorly concealed fascination at witnessing such calculated cruelty. Her sister-in-law's barely suppressed smile confirmed this ambush had not been Maxwell's idea alone. Her first coherent thought was bizarrely practical. "Thank God I stored those greeting card profits in Rose's name." Her second was the absurd urge to apologize to their guests for the disrupted brunch. The third, striking with unexpected clarity, was that despite the public humiliation, despite being blindsided, what she felt rising beneath the shock wasn't despair but something dangerously close to relief. This realization triggered immediate guilt. Shouldn't she fight for her marriage? Try once more to become the wife Maxwell wanted? The questions formed and dissolved as muscle memory took over. Chin lifted, shoulders back, face composed into the pleasant mask she perfected over years of enduring Maxwell's corrections to her behavior. "I see," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately." Maxwell's smile tightened. He'd expected tears, pleading, perhaps even a scene that would validate his narrative of her instability. Her composure clearly disappointed him. "There's nothing to discuss," he replied, voice hardening. "My lawyers have prepared everything. You have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings from my home." "My home." The possessive stung worse than the divorce itself, reminding Olivia how thoroughly she'd allowed herself to be erased. As guests awkwardly dispersed, murmuring excuses, Olivia felt something crack inside her. Not her heart, but the shell of compliance she'd built around it. For the first time in years, she looked directly into Maxwell's eyes without flinching and thought, "This is not how my story ends." My beautiful family, have you ever experienced a moment when what seemed like your greatest humiliation actually became your pathway to freedom? That instant when you realized the thing you feared losing was actually the thing keeping you from becoming who you were meant to be. Drop a heart in the comments if you've ever had to walk through fire to find your true strength. And if you're connecting with Olivia's journey, tap that subscribe button and notification bell. Because what happens next, when she walks away from everything familiar and encounters someone who sees beyond her broken pieces, might just change how you view your own story. The 48 hours Maxwell granted became 24 when he remembered a charity gala requiring the house be prepared for additional guests. Olivia moved through their home, now irrevocably his, selecting only what couldn't be replaced: her mother's hand-embroidered shawl, photographs predating her marriage, the art history books that had sustained her spirit during darkest moments. Mrs. Walsh silently helped pack these treasures, her efficiency masking what might have been sympathy. As Olivia reached for a small watercolor from their Bermuda trip, the housekeeper gently redirected her hand. "He checks the inventory, Mrs. Winters," she murmured. "Best take only what was yours before." The implication was clear. Maxwell had compiled a list of what she could take, and deviations would have consequences. When Olivia opened her jewelry box, she found it already emptied of everything except costume pieces and her grandmother's simple gold wedding band. The pearl necklace from Easter morning was conspicuously absent. Her phone buzzed with texts from unknown numbers, Maxwell's associates offering support that read more like propositions, suggesting her husband had been sharing unflattering stories long before the public announcement. When she called her parents, the line had been disconnected, their normally reliable presence suddenly unreachable. Rose answered on the first ring, voice tight with concern. "He's been here, Liv. Telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown, that you've been stealing money from charity accounts." Olivia's blood chilled. "That's impossible. I've never had access to—" "I know," Rose interrupted. "But he brought documentation. Bank transfers with your signature. Forged, obviously, but convincing. He's covering his bases, making sure no one will help you." The calculated precision of Maxwell's attack became clearer as the day progressed. Her credit cards were declined when she attempted to secure a hotel room. The small savings account she'd maintained was mysteriously empty. Even her car, technically leased under Maxwell's company, was reported stolen when she tried to leave the estate, resulting in a humiliating interaction with security guards at the gate. By evening, Olivia sat on a park bench 3 miles from the house, a single suitcase beside her containing 15 years of identity distilled to essentials. Her phone battery hovered near death, having spent the day in fruitless calls to former friends who suddenly couldn't speak or attorneys who wouldn't take her case against such a respected community leader without substantial retainers. Rain began falling, gentle at first, then with increasing determination, soaking through her light jacket. The park emptied as family sought shelter, leaving Olivia alone with the growing realization that Maxwell had orchestrated a complete extraction, not just from his life, but from the community where she'd spent her adult years. No money, no reputation, no support system. The perfect elimination of an inconvenient wife. As lightning illuminated the darkening park, Olivia finally allowed tears to come, not for the marriage she'd lost, but for the years she'd sacrificed to a man who had planned her disposal with the same methodical precision he applied to business acquisitions. She had become, in the most literal sense, a discarded asset. The rain intensified, matching Olivia's tears as darkness settled over the park. She didn't notice the sleek black Bentley that pulled alongside the curb, nor the tall figure who emerged with an umbrella until his shadow fell across her hunched form. "You'll catch pneumonia out here," a deep voice observed, surprisingly gentle despite its authority. Olivia looked up, blinking through rain-mixed tears at the stranger. Under the shelter of his extended umbrella stood Dominic Blackwood, a name she recognized from newspaper headlines and charity galas, though they'd never formally met. His presence in this neighborhood park seemed as improbable as finding a lion in a suburban backyard. "I'm fine," she managed, instinctively tightening her grip on her suitcase. Dominic's eyes, an unusual shade of amber that almost matched her own, took in her soaked clothes, the carefully packed suitcase, and the subtle bruising her rain-smeared makeup no longer concealed. "Clearly," he replied, a hint of wry understanding softening his words. "Just as I'm simply a concerned citizen who regularly drives through neighborhood parks during thunderstorms." When she didn't respond, he lowered himself onto the bench beside her, maintaining a respectful distance while extending the umbrella's protection. "I witnessed what happened at the Winters brunch today. I was delivering a donation check when Maxwell decided to perform his little power play." Olivia stiffened. "You were there?" "Not as a guest," he clarified. "Maxwell doesn't invite people who've refused to do business with him." The implication hung between them as Dominic reached into his jacket, retrieving an envelope. "What Maxwell doesn't know is that I've spent 6 months investigating his banking practices after one of my foundations was almost defrauded. Inside this envelope is evidence that the financial crimes he's currently framing you for were actually committed by him, including his systematic emptying of your personal accounts over the past 3 years. Olivia stared at the envelope, emotions cascading through her in disorienting waves. Vindication came first, sharp and clarifying, followed immediately by bone-deep rage that almost stole her breath. All those years of Maxwell's concern about her careless spending had actually been calculated theft. Every accusation of financial incompetence had been deliberate gaslighting to conceal his own crimes. "Why?" she whispered, the question encompassing both Maxwell's betrayal and this stranger's unexpected intervention. "Why did he do it?" "Tax evasion primarily, using your identity to create shell accounts," Dominic responded. "Why am I telling you?" "Because innocent people shouldn't pay for others' crimes." Something in his expression, a flicker of personal understanding beneath professional detachment, suggested his motivation ran deeper than justice alone. When Olivia made no move to take the envelope, Dominic gently placed it in her lap. "This gives you options," he said simply. The weight of those words broke something free inside her. Options. Such a simple concept that had become utterly foreign in her controlled existence. Not salvation offered by a white knight, but tools to forge her own path. Tears came again, but different now, not of despair but of something dangerously close to hope, fragile and unexpected as crocuses pushing through snow. As Olivia weighed the envelope in her hands, Dominic's phone chimed with an urgent text. His expression darkened as he read the message. "Your situation has just become more complicated," he said, showing her the screen. "Maxwell has filed a police report claiming you've stolen sensitive financial documents. There's an officer en route to this location now." Olivia's momentary hope crumbled. "How would he know where I am?" "The tracking software on your phone," Dominic replied. "Standard procedure for controlling partners." The revelation that even her physical movements had been monitored sent ice through Olivia's veins. Before she could respond, Dominic continued, "I can offer you temporary sanctuary at my estate while you review those documents and decide your next steps. My legal team is at your disposal, should you choose to use them." He stood, extending his hand. "Or I can call you a cab to any destination of your choice. The decision is entirely yours." Headlights swept the park entrance as a police cruiser turned into the circular drive. Olivia stood, gripping her suitcase with one hand while the other still clutched the envelope containing her possible salvation. Two paths diverged before her: trust this enigmatic stranger or face Maxwell's latest manipulation alone. Either choice required a courage she wasn't sure she possessed. "I'll go with you," Olivia decided, the approaching police lights leaving little room for deliberation. Within moments, they were inside Dominic's Bentley, gliding away from the park as the police cruiser pulled in behind them. Blackwood Estate materialized from the stormy night like something from another era, a sprawling stone manor set against rolling hills, its windows glowing amber against the darkness. A silver-haired housekeeper named Miss Abernathy showed Olivia to a guest suite larger than the apartment she'd had before marrying Maxwell. The woman provided dry clothes and a simple meal with no questions, her efficiency suggesting this wasn't the first time Dominic had brought home someone in distress. Morning brought the first challenge. Maxwell had frozen every account bearing Olivia's name and filed an emergency restraining order against her, claiming she was mentally unstable and had threatened him. The local newspaper featured a heartfelt interview where Maxwell expressed concern for his troubled wife and offered a reward for information leading to her safe return. "He's painting me as both criminal and victim," Olivia observed, scanning the article Dominic's security chief had brought with breakfast. "Clever. If I appear publicly, I'm violating the restraining order. If I stay hidden, it confirms I'm either dangerous or being held against my will." Dominic nodded grimly. "Maxwell's playing multiple angles. My sources say he's also accelerated a merger that was contingent on his family status. Apparently, his potential partners value traditional family structures." "The Abramson Group," Olivia said, surprising Dominic with her knowledge. "I overheard negotiations during his last dinner party. They wouldn't consider the merger while he was married to me because of my immigrant background, but a divorced Maxwell seeking redemption fits their narrative better than Maxwell with his foreign-born wife." The second challenge came when Rose was fired from the community center after suggesting publicly that Maxwell's claims about Olivia seemed suspicious. By noon, Olivia's parents called from Portugal. They hadn't disconnected their phone. Maxwell had rerouted their number to a deadline. Their worry was palpable, intensified by rumors that had somehow reached even their small coastal town. "He's systematically isolating you," Dominic observed, "making sure anyone who might support you faces consequences." The third and most alarming challenge arrived with Dominic's attorney, who brought news that Maxwell had filed documents claiming Olivia had stolen proprietary financial information before disappearing. The penalty, if proven, carried jail time. "He's getting desperate," Dominic said, reviewing the filings. "These accusations directly contradict his concerned husband narrative." "Or they complement it perfectly," Olivia countered. "Mentally unstable wife steals sensitive documents during breakdown. It explains any incriminating information that might surface while positioning him as the victim." As the week progressed, Maxwell's tactics escalated. Olivia's few remaining friends received anonymous emails containing manufactured evidence of her supposed affairs. Her former art history professor, who'd been planning to offer her a research position, received documentation of plagiarism she'd never committed. Even Dominic wasn't immune, regulatory investigations into his charitable foundations suddenly accelerated, with anonymous tips suggesting financial irregularities. "He's remarkably thorough," Dominic noted without humor, reviewing the mounting attacks over dinner in his study. "He must have been planning this for months." The most disturbing development came on Maundy Thursday when Ms. Abernathy discovered a sophisticated tracking device attached to Dominic's car, suggesting someone had followed them from the park and now knew Olivia's location. Security footage revealed a figure in groundskeeping attire who'd never been employed by the estate. "We're not just dealing with Maxwell anymore," Dominic's security chief explained. "He's hired professionals." That night, unable to sleep, Olivia found herself in Dominic's library, surrounded by first editions and the comforting scent of leather bindings. She hadn't expected to find him there, nursing a glass of whiskey while rain lashed against leaded windows. "I should leave," she said without preamble. "You've done enough, and Maxwell's vendetta is now affecting your business." Dominic studied her for a long moment. "Is that what you want, or what you think you should want?" The question, simple yet profound, caught her off guard. What did she want? For so long, her desires had been subsumed by Maxwell's expectations, her own voice silenced by his demands. "I want—" she began, then faltered. "I want to stop being afraid. I want one day where I don't flinch at loud noises or apologize for existing. I want to remember who I was before he convinced me that person wasn't good enough." Dominic set his glass aside. "I understand that better than you might think." Something in his tone invited question, and Olivia found herself asking, "How could you possibly understand?" "My father was Maxwell Winters with a different name and twice the wealth," he replied, rolling up his sleeve to reveal a jagged scar running from wrist to elbow. "Jonathan Blackwood believed appearances mattered more than people. When I was 16 and brought home a less-than-perfect report card, he demonstrated his disappointment with a crystal paperweight." The revelation shifted something between them, an unexpected bridge of shared experience that transformed Dominic from enigmatic benefactor to someone who genuinely understood her fear. "How did you escape?" she asked. "My grandfather intervened, gave me a choice my mother never had." His expression softened with memory. "He told me, 'Your father can control your circumstances, but only if you give him permission to control your spirit.'" Olivia absorbed his words, recognizing their truth. Maxwell had controlled her circumstances, but somewhere in the park that night, drenched and desperate, she'd reclaimed her spirit. "What happened to your father?" she asked. "He died believing I'd forgiven him," Dominic answered, surprising her. "I let him think that because I needed to forgive him, not for his sake, but for mine. Carrying hatred was keeping me bound to him more surely than any inheritance." The wisdom in his words resonated through Olivia's carefully constructed defenses, touching something she'd thought Maxwell had destroyed, her capacity to hope for healing beyond mere survival. "My beautiful family, can you feel the connection forming between these wounded souls? Sometimes our deepest pain becomes the very language that helps us understand each other when all other words fail. If you've ever found unexpected understanding from someone who's walked a similar path, drop a love in the comments. And if you're invested in Olivia's journey toward reclaiming her power, make sure you've hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Because the revelation coming next, the truth behind Maxwell's sudden divorce and the real reason Dominic Blackwood has risked everything to help a stranger, will change everything you thought you knew about this story. As dawn broke on Good Friday, Dominic's security chief burst into the breakfast room, tablet in hand. "You need to see this," he said, placing it before them. The screen showed security footage from Maxwell's office, dated 3 months earlier. In it, Maxwell met with a gray-haired man whose face made Dominic go instantly rigid. "That's impossible," he whispered. "He's dead." On screen, the older man handed Maxwell a folder. When Maxwell opened it, his expression transformed from skepticism to shock as he examined photos that, even on the grainy footage, clearly showed Olivia and Dominic together. Photos from before they'd ever met. "Photoshopped," Olivia whispered, staring at the impossible images. The photos showed her and Dominic in various settings: a cafe in Paris, a gallery opening in New York, walking through Central Park, all places she'd visited with Maxwell, now digitally altered to replace her husband with Dominic. "Not just photoshopped," Dominic replied, his voice unnaturally calm. "Those are surveillance photos. Someone followed you for months, documenting your movements, then edited me into them." The security chief enhanced the footage, focusing on the gray-haired man. "Jonathan Blackwood died 3 years ago in a boating accident," he explained to Olivia. "Or rather, his death was confirmed after his yacht exploded off the coast of Monaco. No body was ever recovered." "He's alive," Dominic stated flatly, "and working with Maxwell." The pieces assembled in Olivia's mind with terrible clarity. This was never about me, she realized. Maxwell's divorce, the public humiliation, the financial frame-up, it was all to draw you out. Dominic nodded grimly. "My father always said my greatest weakness was helping strays." His bitter laugh held no humor. Apparently, he decided to create one irresistible enough to ensure I'd intervene. The revelation struck Olivia with physical force. She wasn't even the principal character in her own humiliation, merely bait in a vendetta between powerful men. The years of emotional abuse, the public destruction of her reputation, her entire marriage, all potentially orchestrated as components in Jonathan Blackwood's revenge against his son. "Why?" she demanded, fury replacing shock. "What could possibly justify using another human being this way?" "The Blackwood Foundation," Dominic answered. "After I discovered my father's offshore accounts and tax evasion schemes, I threatened to expose him unless he transferred majority control of the family holdings to my charitable foundation. He chose apparent death over public disgrace." His knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. "Now he wants it back." The library door crashed open as armed security rushed in. "Perimeter breach," the lead officer reported. "Multiple vehicles approaching from the East Road." On the security monitors, 3 black SUVs pushed through the estate gates, followed by 2 police cruisers with flashing lights. Maxwell emerged from the lead vehicle, accompanied by a silver-haired man who moved with chilling confidence despite his age. "They're here for the foundation documents," Dominic realized, "and to eliminate both of us as witnesses." As security scrambled to defensive positions, Olivia felt a strange calm descend. For the first time, she saw Maxwell clearly, not as the powerful man who had controlled her life, but as a pathetic pawn in someone else's game. She caught her reflection in the window glass and barely recognized the woman staring back, eyes fierce, jaw set, posture straight. "Give me your phone," she said to Dominic, an idea forming. "I know exactly what they want, and how to use it against them." Dominic's security team created a diversion at the front entrance while Olivia enacted her plan from his study. With steady hands that surprised even herself, she connected his phone to the estate security system, then dialed a number she'd memorized years ago but never dared use. "Federal Banking Commission, Financial Crimes Division," answered a crisp voice. "My name is Olivia Winters," she stated clearly. "I'm calling to report multiple instances of wire fraud, tax evasion, and identity theft. I have documentation ready to transmit, and I'm prepared to testify." As she spoke, she uploaded the evidence Dominic had given her in the park, along with the security footage showing Jonathan Blackwood alive. She added Maxwell's forged documents framing her, the manufactured plagiarism accusations, bank statements showing the systematic emptying of her accounts. "I'm also informing you that Jonathan Blackwood, previously reported deceased, is currently trespassing at Blackwood Estate with armed individuals, attempting to seize foundation documents. Local police appear to be cooperating with him rather than intervening." The agent's tone shifted from professional to urgent as the scope of Olivia's report became clear. Federal agents were dispatched immediately, with instructions for Olivia to maintain the call. When Dominic returned to the study, he found Olivia calmly directing a federal agent through the evidence while monitoring security feeds showing Maxwell and Jonathan being detained by newly arrived FBI officers. "You did this?" he asked, astonishment evident in his voice. "I spent years documenting Maxwell's business dealings," she explained. "Initially for self-protection, later because I suspected illegal activity. I just never had the courage to use the information." Her smile held no warmth. Amazing what clarity comes when you discover your entire marriage was a manipulation tactic in someone else's revenge plot. The woman standing before him bore little resemblance to the defeated figure he'd found in the rain. This Olivia radiated quiet power and determination, her former timidity replaced by purposeful calm. "They underestimated you," Dominic observed with newfound respect. "Everyone always has," she replied. "Including me." By Easter Sunday morning, Jonathan Blackwood and Maxwell Winters were in federal custody, facing multiple charges of financial fraud, conspiracy, and filing false reports. The investigation had expanded to include the local police department, where several officers had been on Jonathan's payroll for years. Olivia stood in Dominic's garden, watching sunrise paint the horizon in shades of pink and gold. The morning newspapers, delivered with breakfast, featured front-page stories about Maxwell's arrest and the resurrection of the supposedly dead Jonathan Blackwood. Her name appeared not as victim but as key whistleblower whose testimony had unraveled a complex financial conspiracy. "Your reputation is restored," Dominic said, joining her with coffee. "The federal prosecutor wants to meet tomorrow to discuss your testimony." "It's strange," Olivia reflected. "A week ago, I was terrified of speaking against Maxwell even to save myself. Now I'm ready to testify against him to save others from similar schemes." The morning light caught the gold band she still wore, her grandmother's ring, the only piece of jewelry Maxwell hadn't taken. With deliberate movements, she removed it and placed it in her pocket. The indentation on her finger would fade with time, as would the deeper marks Maxwell had left on her spirit. "The prosecutor mentioned compensation," Dominic said carefully. "As a whistleblower in a financial crimes case of this magnitude, you're entitled to a percentage of recovered assets. It could be substantial." Olivia nodded, already considering possibilities. "Enough to restart my art history career. Maybe even open that small gallery I once dreamed about." As church bells rang across the valley, announcing Easter services, Dominic hesitated before asking, "What happens now?" Olivia turned to face him fully, her expression open yet cautious. "Now I discover who I am when I'm not defined by fear. Now I build a life that belongs entirely to me." She extended her hand, not in need but in possibility. And perhaps, when I'm ready, we discover if there's something real between two people who met under false circumstances but connected through genuine understanding. 1 year later, Olivia stood in the center of Nouveau Renaissance, her newly opened gallery specializing in works by survivors of domestic abuse. Sunlight streamed through skylights, illuminating vibrant paintings and sculptures that transformed pain into beauty. Her own series of mixed-media pieces, titled Resurrection, occupied the feature wall, each canvas chronicling her journey from captivity to freedom. The woman who greeted collectors and artists moved with a confidence Maxwell would never recognize. Her voice clear and unwavering, her clothing vibrant rather than muted, her laughter unrestricted. The whistleblower settlement had provided financial independence, but it was her testimony that had given her something more valuable, her voice. Maxwell and Jonathan Blackwood had both received substantial sentences, their elaborate conspiracy exposed in a trial that became a media sensation. Olivia had testified with quiet dignity, looking directly at Maxwell as she detailed years of psychological manipulation and financial control. His attempts to paint her as unstable had crumbled under the weight of evidence and her clear-eyed testimony. "You've created something remarkable here," said Dominic, appearing beside her with 2 champagne flutes. The past year had transformed their relationship from rescuer and rescued to something more balanced. 2 people healing alongside each other, learning to trust again at their own pace. "We both have," she replied, accepting the glass. Dominic had restructured his foundation to focus specifically on supporting survivors of financial abuse, creating programs that help them rebuild credit and develop financial literacy. Their romance had developed slowly, with careful boundaries and profound respect. Dominic had waited patiently while Olivia rediscovered herself, never rushing her healing process or claiming ownership of her success. When they'd finally shared their first kiss 6 months after Easter, it had been Olivia who initiated it, a choice made from strength rather than gratitude or obligation. "To new beginnings," Dominic toasted, his eyes reflecting the same hard-won peace she felt. "And to recognizing endings as doorways," Olivia added, "not walls." The most profound lesson of Olivia's journey wasn't that pain could be transformed into strength, though certainly her experience proved this truth. Rather, it was the realization that even in our darkest moments, when we feel most thoroughly erased, the essence of who we are remains intact, waiting to be reclaimed. Maxwell had spent years convincing Olivia she was nothing without him, a common tactic of abusers who maintain control by destroying their victim's sense of self. Yet when faced with the ultimate crisis, her core identity had reasserted itself. The young woman who had excelled in college, who had dreamed of curating stories through art, who had believed in human connection, she had never truly disappeared. This truth offers hope to anyone feeling lost in circumstances that seem to define them. Whether trapped in toxic relationships, unfulfilling careers, or patterns of self-doubt, we are always more than our current situation. Our authentic selves remain, sometimes buried beneath layers of others' expectations or our own fears, but always accessible when we find the courage to dig deeply enough. Renewal isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who we've always been beneath the identities others have assigned us, and claiming the authority to define ourselves. My beautiful family, I share Olivia's story because I know many of you have experienced your own versions of erasure. Perhaps not through an abusive marriage, but through relationships, jobs, or social expectations that slowly convinced you to make yourself smaller, quieter, less authentic. Some of you have lost yourselves in caring for others, setting aside your dreams as selfish or impractical. Others have adapted to environments that punished your natural gifts while rewarding traits that feel foreign to your spirit. Many have internalized criticism until outside voices became your own inner dialogue. I see you questioning whether you'll ever find your way back to the person you once were, that version of yourself who dreamed boldly, loved openly, and moved through the world with confidence rather than caution. Olivia's journey reminds us that reclaiming our authentic selves isn't a single dramatic moment but a series of small choices, each one an act of courage, each one bringing us closer to wholeness. The path isn't linear. There are setbacks and moments of doubt. But with each step toward authenticity, we create the possibility for joy that once seemed permanently beyond our reach. Your resurrection story is waiting to be written. It begins the moment you decide you're worth fighting for. If Olivia's journey has touched something deep within you, a recognition of your own strength, or perhaps the first stirrings of hope that transformation is possible, I invite you to join our storytelling family permanently. Subscribe now and become part of a community that believes in the power of stories to heal, inspire, and connect us across our different experiences. In the comments below, share one small act of reclamation you're committed to this week. It might be wearing a color you love but were told wasn't flattering, speaking up in a meeting when you'd normally stay silent, or simply standing before a mirror and saying words of kindness to your reflection. Let's create a tapestry of courage together, each thread strengthening the whole. For those walking through their darkest Easter Saturday right now, that space between loss and resurrection, know that you're not alone. Your story isn't over. The seemingly impossible transformation from caterpillar to butterfly happens in the darkness of the cocoon, just as our most profound growth often occurs during our most challenging seasons. Remember Olivia's words, endings are doorways, not walls. And sometimes, what feels like the end of everything is actually the first chapter of the story you were always meant to live.